All right, welcome everybody. This is the working group LTS meeting for January 6th, 2024. Managed to put the right year in the agenda. We have a pretty light agenda today. I know some folks are out, but I wanted to signal boost a couple things and see what other people wanted to talk about. Before we get going, are there any folks who are new? This is their first time. I'd like to say hi and maybe where you're coming from, what your interest in the working group is. Give a minute in case anyone wants to jump in. All right. Welcome everybody. Happy New Year. These are just a few things top of mind for me. I know we had presented to the working group a month or two ago about compatibility mode proposal, where behavior was separated from the actual binary version. A newer binary could act as an older binary in terms of behavior. And so that actually got opened as a KEP proposal. So take a look at that. That's relevant to some of the upgrade patterns and in the direction of skip level upgrades. It's not quite there yet, but it is a direction that you could imagine sort of leading to that if that was decided. It was worth it. Anyway, the KEP is open. KEP freeze is February 8th, I think. And the goal is to have this implementable as alpha for 130. So in the next week or so, we're looking to gather input and address questions. And if it looks reasonable, then we'll hopefully get that to implementable in the next 2 or 3 weeks. All right. So that was more of an FYI. Let's take discussion to the pull request instead of having it here. I'm sure that people have feedback. We want to hear your feedback. Please put it on the pull request so we can incorporate it. All right. Next bit. The survey is still open. We had said it was going to be open until early January. Today's the 16th, so technically it's no longer early January. Maybe we could call all of January early January. It feels like it. I don't know that we actually set an end date for the survey. If nobody's like chomping at the bit to compile results today, I'd probably leave it open as long as we can to keep getting feedback. I don't know if people have thoughts about when to close it. We should probably announce it's going to close so we can sort of signal boost the closing. Like if you haven't done it and you've been meaning to, go ahead and take it.
We already had January in people's heads. Why don't we just say January 31st? That gives us one more meeting to remind people.
Yeah,
and we can do analysis before the February 13th meeting.
Yeah, that sounds good. Let's signal boost to the mailing list and to Kubernetes dev. We'll leave the survey open until the end of the month. And so if you've been meaning to take it and haven't taken it, or have places you can signal boost it, go ahead and do so because the window's closing. Speaking of working through some of the results of the survey, I know we had talked about there's a lot of freeform text questions, and we'll probably want to bucket those once we sort of get all the data and can identify rough buckets. So once the survey closes, I think a first step would be to look at the freeform text questions and sort of get buckets to try to pull patterns out of those. But then having a bucketing party where we actually split up the data and say, like, everybody take 10 things or 20 things or 50 things and like see if you can assign them to categories. I know Lori had volunteered in Slack to help crunch some of the data. That's great. We'll thank her. I think Bridget, you had replied in Slack. So yeah, whether we take a normal LTS meeting to do that, that might be easiest because people have it on their calendars. And like doing it high bandwidth, I think would be beneficial. Like if someone says, well, what about this? What do people think about this? Where does this fall? Or do we need another bucket? Things like that. That'd be nice to do high bandwidth.
Do you think it would be worth doing that the officially day before survey closes, just because that way everyone will have looked at it in detail and be able to go back to others and be like, hey, you hadn't thought you should fill it out, but now that I've looked at a bunch of the survey data, you have one more day and that your data would be great in here. I don't know if that would be valuable or not for a first pass, but
14th, 30th. I mean, sure. Next meeting will be close enough to the end of the survey that we've pretty
yeah.
much got the data we're going to have. I think that would be fine.
Right.
Looking at the agenda for the next meeting, there is nothing on there yet. So let's start that. All right. Sounds good. All right, Scott, you are up. You want to talk about kubelinter, or was this like an
Yeah,
FYI thing?
yeah, FYI. I think there was some discussion in the LTS channel about like problems with workload, and we have a tool, kubelinter, that goes through and it looks for it. It came from StackRox. It's does a lot of stuff around security, but it also does things like look to make sure there are probes and various different things. And we here are using as part of a solution to deliver some services that will actually integrate with the product and tell people when they have workload through the console that is not compatible with upgrades or other issues. And I wanted to just mention it here because the tool itself is, it's Apache license, and the team that's working on it is definitely interested in having broader community contributions. And I'm wondering if maybe I think they're possibly interested in potentially moving it into a kubesig or something like that repo. So I don't know that process. I've never been through anything like that, and this is just some initial conversations with the lead from that project, and maybe I think would it be interesting maybe to get them to come here and sort of give a little bit of a deeper dive into the specifics of things that might help around upgrades, and then maybe start follow-up conversations as to whether, just use it where it is, move it into a kubesig repo or something like that.
Okay. Yeah, I would really like to hear sort of an experience report from them on the types of things they've run into and found useful to flag. Like we could sort of pick through the repo ourselves, but they could probably tell us more quickly.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I was wondering if it made use of like metrics and things, but it looks like it's only manifest scanning, so
Yeah.
it's not actually hitting a live cluster. Okay.
Right. Yeah. It never, as far as I know, attempted to do like deprecated APIs, but it was more like, hey, you have a pod and you don't have a replica set, or things like that
Mhm.
try to guide people towards workloads that are saying liveness, readiness probes, affinity, and affinity, all those sort of things it checks for.
Gotcha. When you put the topic on there, I had a different tool in my mind, and I can't remember which one it is now, but that one does hit live clusters and does check like metrics and things. I can't remember if we've talked about that before. I thought that was this one, but this was a different one.
I think there's a project called Cube No Problem or something like that.
Yeah, that was it. Quick Google. Cube No Trouble.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Do you know the folks who, or have you worked with the folks who work on this?
I've not worked with them. I've proposed this idea to them, and they're pretty interested in collaborating, and it does a lot of other things like security stuff, like I said, but they are interested in working with us.
Yeah, you wanna like invite them to maybe not the next meeting if we're doing bucketing stuff, but like see if they're interested in presenting, and maybe queue it up for like February or something.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. I'll keep the conversation going on this side and see if they can, maybe give us like a 5-minute overview of what they think would be interesting to upgrades and go from there.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Jordan.
Oh, this just occurred to me. Go 121, the release team, SIG release, is updating release branches to Go 121. So currently, all of our release branches, except for the 129 branch, which we just released, are still on Go 120. And Go 120 hits end of life in February when Go 122 gets released. So the Go project maintains 2 versions at a time, and so Go the process to update release branches to a current Go version says a month after we release a new Kubernetes miner on a Go version and don't have regression reports and like have good signal in production that it's working fine, along with several other requirements. Like at that point, we can update release branches to Go, that Go version. And so this is the first time that we've done this without having to sort of make tweaks to adjust for compatibility issues with Go. And that's because Go 121 is when a lot of the automatic backwards compatibility stuff landed. So starting in Go 121, Go looks at the Go version declared in your Go mod file and says, I will behave at runtime like the default behaviors for this version of Go. And so this is like the culmination of a 2 or 3 year project, which I'm super excited about. So yeah, we had updated release branches to new Go versions before, but we'd always had to kind of say, well, this changed and we need to tweak this, and this change we need to adjust this, and this change we need to adjust this. And so this is the first time where like the release team did the speculative bump and all the CI just passed and like nothing needed to be updated. So that's great. Just in time for 120 to hit end of life. And so this is like the worst release alignment scenario where our 128 released in August, and it just missed picking up Go 121. Like we could have picked it up technically, but it would have been like a week before we released, and we're like, we'll wait till 129. That's fine. And so this is like the worst case release misalignment, and we still are able to get release branches onto the next Go version before it goes out of support. So that makes me really happy.
Have they given any like contract around how long they will maintain that compatibility? Like how many releases?
Go 121. Let's see. I think it was 2 years. 2 years. Yeah. I'll link to the page in the notes. It says Go debug settings, which is the mechanism they're using, added for compatibility, will be maintained for a minimum of 2 years. And so there are some like the defaulting to HTTP2 client and server stuff, like they sort of expect to retain indefinitely, but minimum of 2 years.
Oh, thanks, Jordan.
Yeah. And that's on top of the, like, we already get a year of normal support. So if we start on like Go 118, it's possible that Go 119 would change something but maintain a compatibility mode. And so that's 2 years and the 6 months or so from the original lifetime of Go 118 before 119 came out. So 2.5 to 3 years is what you could get before you might not be able to upgrade Go versions without addressing a behavior change on an old release branch. All right, we have reached the end of our hastily assembled agenda. Is there anything that anyone wants to chat about or ideas for future agenda items that we could queue up and go do the work to pull in folks or pull in talks or topics?
I already heard back from Lori. She is going to come to this meeting in 2 weeks and help us work on the analysis. And do we have, I don't think we clarified who was going to do the outreach about, hey, we're extending this, but it's going to close. Is that going to be you, Jordan, or is somebody else going to
Yeah,
do it?
I'll send it to our mailing list and the Kubernetes dev mailing list.
Wonderful, thanks.
I will assign that to myself. I think we have an outstanding to do about a survey for an alternate time for the meeting, which we need to do.
Yeah, I don't think we've had an opportunity to, what we call it, is and all gather data yet about when people would like to do it.
Yeah. All right.
Would the most reasonable thing to do be figure out who in APAC would likely run it and narrow it down to when they can run it, as opposed to just asking people, when would you like the meeting? Well, too bad. That's the exact time that the person who could run it can't do it.
Yeah, in fact, like figuring out who would run it and having them create the poll would probably make more sense. Yeah. Let me hoist that up to here.
As if, Nick or whomever is going to run it from APAC then. Okay.
Yeah. Like hoisting AIs from lower in the dock back up to the top so they don't get lost. Might be Nick. Yeah, we'll ask in Slack and see. I'm guessing it would probably be Nick, but we'll see. All right. Anything else? Ideas for future stuff or stuff that's slipping through the cracks that we want to signal boost? We will try to be a little better organized for the next meeting, and we have the data, freeform text responses, and sort of a doc or a spreadsheet or something where we can do buckets and things. All right, I think we'll call it there. Thanks, everybody. Good to see you. See you next time. Don't forget to tell folks about the survey. All right,
For
bye.
sure. Bye.
Bye, folks.